go. Shannon, admit. Good.
Cool.
There we
Uh,
go.
are we ready to kick it off, Blair?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
No, just hold on for 2 seconds. It's setting up the meeting for YouTube. I'll tell you when that's done. Then we can go.
All right.
Okay, so almost 3/4 of the way through setting up. I don't know how come, but there we go. It just zipped through the rest. All right, we're live.
Okay. All right. Welcome to tonight's BDE, everybody. We are on episode 343, which is pretty dang cool. We've been at this for quite a bit. Before I do the full intro, just wanted to make sure that I announce Blair has a an opportunity for those of you who are um, attending the BDE, both here on the Zoom and also watching on YouTube, to have access to a really cool resource. It is his BDE notes and study guide. And what it is it's a deeper dive into the topics that we're covering here. And you're going to get all historical and ongoing notes from the Blair Dunkley experience, starting with episode 318. And as I mentioned, tonight is 343. So there's quite a great catalog of details and mind models and different topics that we've used. So definitely get your hands on that. It's $25 a month or $300 a year. I'm going to go ahead and pop that in the chat for those of you here on Zoom if you have not had an opportunity yet. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you can go to blairdunkley.com/BDE-insider-notes, and you can sign up to get it there.
I also wanted to mention just real quick, if I may, now is actually an excellent time to grab those insider notes if you haven't already taken the opportunity to do so, because we are actually going into a bit of a reboot series starting tonight. And so this is an excellent time to have those insider notes that go into the mind models a little more in depth than what we may get to here on tonight's episode. So if you haven't already, now is a great time to grab those insider notes. Just putting that out there.
Great point. Great point. Yeah. So definitely do so. As we mentioned, we're going to be getting into some of the basics, but basics doesn't mean that it's just like generic, right? We're going to go deeper, and there's some really great nuggets that we're going to be talking about, again, as Tim mentioned, starting with the reboot tonight. With that, officially welcome to the 343rd episode of the Blair Dunkley Experience, where we are discussing mind models. Mind models are a collection of extensively tested thought frameworks, skills, and behaviors that enable people to transform their lives intentionally. Our host for this evening is Blair Dunkley, the creator of Mind Models. We're Tim and Becky Graff, your co-hosts and certified mind model coaches, along with the amazing Patty McClurg. And just a little bit about mind models, okay? Mind models have helped us in every area of our life, not only in business, but personally resolving an 8-year issue in our marriage within a couple hours, to the navigation of grief and PTSD from a tragic accident in 2020, where we lost both of our young daughters. Mind models have allowed us to be more effective and increase our capacities and speed of recovery without traditional counseling. And this is a really cool thing because Blair has put together the BDE as his free gift from him to help you learn, experience, and practice mind models in a safe, real-world environment so you can start having some similar changes in your own world. We look forward to learning with you tonight and welcome you to the BDE. And as a reminder, if you're on YouTube, please make sure you comment, like, and subscribe, and so that you get notified of any episodes as they're released, and that you can join us live on Tuesdays at 7 and 7 Mountain, and 9 p.m. Eastern. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Patty.
Well, thank you. So tonight we are beginning a new series. We're calling it the Reboot series. These are the foundations of mind models. We're going to look at tonight how mind models work, the identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable. When Blair discovered these, or discovered them, trying to think a better word would be, he named and labeled what he saw.
True.
So that it became identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable from a behavioral point of view. The science of the reason these things worked wasn't available to him, but what he did was observe people, observed what worked, put names and labels to them, and taught them. Now we have new research that shows the reason all of these things worked. He didn't have that then. He was just a master of noticing. He was a master of noticing and a master of naming and labeling. So I'm going to ask, Brent, can I start with you and ask you a question? What's the reason that we as a human species can learn, adapt, and change our behavior better than other species?
All right. I would,
My dog cannot use my models.
yeah. Sure. It's, I don't know. I mean, really, I'm not sure if I could figure this one out. But,
Okay.
maybe there's also, instinct, but there's a survival piece for thinking, curiosity. There's the communication between um, between
All of those
others and
things are
yourself. So the
true.
communication piece to be effective and to 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 adapt and to learn.
Right.
Right.
How
That's
do we adapt and learn?
well, we test things and
Mhm. We do
evaluate what
test
worked, what didn't
things.
work.
Right. And so what do we do with what we learn?
We use it to I don't know, we would use it to improve or discard
Right.
what didn't work or things worked,
Mhm.
what worked and what didn't work. Use those
Right.
and to to be more effective.
All of those things are absolutely true.
Mhm.
Michael, what's the reason we can learn, adapt, and change our behavior better than other species?
I would say pattern recognition
Mm, okay, interesting.
and then trial and error.
Okay, all right. Jackie, or I'm sorry, Jacqueline, would you like to participate tonight? I can't hear you. Okay. I would love to have your input on some of this. So if you do get your mic working, let us know. All right, memory. We have the most complex and effective memory of any species. So Brent brought out the 3 E's: what's effective, not effective, looking at external evidence, evaluation. He's looking at the 3 E's. I mentioned the ANANPU, which is the awareness, notice, process, understanding, with Blair having tremendous ability to notice and then apply what he was noticing. So what I want to do, we're going to talk a lot about memory tonight, and I'm going to have Becky, if you could put the definition in the chat. But memory is the expression of knowledge, recognition, or retrieval of what you've acquired through learning. So, Michael, when you said pattern recognition, that's part of what we get from memory. We remember what we've seen, we identify patterns, and we recognize them. And Brent, what you were saying too, very, very applicable. But memory is central to every single cognitive function. It affects everything we perceive, think, plan, and do. Memories can sometimes be accurately recalled, but can also be changed, updated, distorted, and forgotten. We think our memories are accurate, but we make a lot of mistakes in recall that we're not aware of. So um, I think Brent, you were saying, what would you say the major function of memory is? You mentioned it earlier. I don't know if you heard yourself.
I'm not sure if I did either. Um,
What is the major function of memory?
well, we learn from things what worked and what didn't work to be more effective. So we have that.
Right. And
memory.
what do we do with what we learn again?
We apply that to different situations from the past that we've learned into the future. What worked to be more effective, use it again, and then to
And
adapt
what
and
does
things that
that
didn't
do
work.
for us? What does
What's
that
that?
do for us? What does that allow us to do? You had it in one.
Yeah.
Welcome, Christy. I'm glad you're here.
Well, it allows us to yes, I missed it.
Memory has one major function. Can you imagine your life without memory?
I don't know, everything would be brand new.
Mhm.
Experiences,
All the
everything.
time. What is
Yeah.
that movie? It was like 50 First Dates or something where
Yeah.
she had no memory.
Yeah.
Okay.
After that day, it was reset.
Yes, but she at least had one day's worth of memory. So what would it be if you had no memory?
Could we survive with no memory?
Oh, is that what I was talking about? Survival is learning and evaluating survival. I mean, you might. It would be very difficult, like a crapshoot, really. Yeah, I mean, every situation is brand new. You might run into the same thing every single day.
Yeah, but then that would still require memory. See, even if you don't have memory at all, you don't know what food is. You don't know what the bathroom is. You don't know what anything is. Your body does stuff, but it doesn't even know how to figure out what it does. There's nothing in there. There's void. You have no point to go forward from, because every time you're at a different point in our model of the world, but in your model of the world, it would be the same point. It just would be different to everybody else. But you're always starting everything all the time, like 24/7, until you exhaust yourself. And you may not even know that hunger means to eat. You don't know. We use memory everywhere, in so many areas of our lives, such subtle places.
And memory is very layered,
Oh, totally layered.
very, very layered. So how many neural pathways of memory do you think it takes to go to the grocery store? Michael?
I'd say hundreds, if not thousands.
Lots of different memories. How to get there, how to perhaps drive a car, how to walk, what foods, how to check out, all of these different experiences for how to navigate just a trip to the grocery store. Now, if we remembered absolutely everything that came into our world, how sane would we be? Blair, you're shaking your head.
Well, we'd be nuts, because we have to filter. Like,
Yes.
it is a requirement of survival. But
Mhm.
figuring out what we filter is also a part of being able to set priorities.
Mhm.
And that is so critical in life. Like, to be honest with you, this is taking me back to the early days. Well, it is a reboot series, Like it's right back to the original things that got me going in creating mind models at Life Skills College, because I was sick and tired of all those gurus out there back 40 years ago, 50 years ago, almost 50 years ago, next February 11th, next year, 2026, I'll be having been doing this for 50 years.
Wow.
I know. But way back then, it was, what is it? What is that thing that creates opportunities for some people and stuck states and depression and potentially suicidal thoughts for others? What separates those? And really, it comes down to how we think, not what we think or believe, even. Like you have beliefs. Well, all your beliefs are made up of memories. And then they shift over time, as you said. Like there is, like, this whole thing I've watched a few times with Neil deGrasse Tyson, or whatever, is the astrophysicist, that guy who talks about memory sometimes. And the research that he's seen on it shows absolutely conclusively that, okay, I recall the story now. The story goes something like this. He was asked to become a juror, and he said he would have to, like, could he pass, like, come to a judgment based on what an eyewitness said. And he said, with all the science that I'm aware of as of right now, there's no way that I could conclusively determine based on just one eyewitness and one testimony that this person is guilty or not. And then the judge turned to somebody else in the jury box and said, as they were selecting the jury, and asked them more or less the same question, but modified it so that it was more like, I want you to say yes, we need a jury. And that, behind him, he was wondering, should he speak out? Should he say something? But fortunately, the guy right behind him said, excuse me, Your Honor, but you just changed the question that you thought you asked Mr. Tyson or Mr. deGrasse. And, and the judge goes, no, I didn't. And the juror said, yes, he did. And that was like right there, the evidence of how people don't even remember from 1 second to the next exactly what's happening accurately enough. And so it was just bizarre what's going on. And that was, if we need to believe something to behave, which we don't, then we're really screwed up, because that's not exactly how the flow works.
But people do learn and remember strongly affected by the context of their personal experiences.
Absolutely. And from that strong context, we build assumptions, and those assumptions become our beliefs. We assume that things should happen a certain way because they have a few times for us.
But no two people experience the world in identical ways. A quote from Richard Rustick: no two people experience the world in identical ways, and therefore individual memories and the neuronal networks comprising them will always differ. Always differ.
Yeah.
And everybody's experiences are unique, and those provide some context and in many ways a filter for our perceptions. So get back to mind models for a minute. Yes, perspective, exactly, Jackie or Jacqueline. Anyway, so when we're looking at my models, Blair says that my models are identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable. So the question is then, what makes them identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable? In order to do that, we need to look at what makes them sticky. What makes them so sticky? And this gets back into the physiology of memory. We have two long-term memory encoding systems. There's the explicit, which is conscious memory. Long-term, we have a memory for facts that tends to be more up here, but it includes the hippocampus, the amygdala, and the posterior cerebral cortex. But the declarative memory is what we know. We talked last week, I think, about the short-term memory having about a 7-second span. It's like an eraser coming behind us. We hold it for 7 seconds. And if we're only hearing and not actually deeply listening, which is what the last series was about, that eraser will come and we can repeat the words, but we have no idea what the meaning was. And it then generally is erased. So then we have what's called working memory, and that's what we hold on to. So right now, my memory is erasing how do my feet feel, what is the clothing feeling on my skin, what's going on outside the window. I'm not focusing on any of those things. Those things are just kind of gone. My body is filtering them out. They're too much clutter for my brain to hold every piece of data that's coming into my brain. So working memory holds the information for a couple of minutes, and that's when we rehearse it, we analyze it, we play with it, so that we can turn that into an awareness. And then we have procedural memory, which is long-term, and that's the unconscious memory. So declarative memory, what we know, impacts procedural memory. Once it's solidified, once procedural memory is solidified, it doesn't want to change. What my models do is give us procedures so that we can solidify what we know by how we know. So this is the reason that my models are sticky behaviors. They're named and labeled with words that have general common meanings, easily understood and recalled. So we're layering what we know on how we know. And then once those are solidified, they don't want to change. And we get my models practiced into us, and they just hold us. We use them almost like speaking a second language.
So that's sort of like what happened to you, Tim and Becky. You found, like you shared the marriage thing in the first bit, and how you just learned that. I recall the day that you were there was first day of my model method coach training, right before lunchtime. You guys went up, and we did that live back then, and you went back to your hotel room because it was here in Edmonton, and you went upstairs and came back and shared this breakthrough that you had. Yet it stuck quickly. What was that experience like? And how come it didn't work for 8 years prior? What didn't work? I don't care about the content. I want to hear the process.
The process prior was not having an effective process for identification of what is, roles and responsibilities, and updating, naming and labeling.
Exactly. And what happened when you see, that was what Patty was talking about, is a procedural memory. And if we know how to think, and that thought is reasonable to our brain, to us, do you think we're going to use it? How come?
Well, it removes pain and resistance. It's more fluid, and it gets us closer to what we want in life.
How come? You're right, but how come?
Because it's process based.
Yes, and process and flow are sort of interchangeable here. What else? Oh, pardon me.
Shane says, what wires together fires together.
Partially true, but then how come that other stuff about what you believe and what works or what you think works changes?
Our behavior changed fundamentally. Our process, our procedure was updated.
Correct. And what does the brain do with that procedure? What do we have to figure out? Do you notice how you've got a lot of procedures in your life, like walking being one of them, right? You know how to walk. Do you really think about walking?
Mm.
No? Okay. So if you don't have to think about walking, what makes walking sticky?
I'm gonna say it's an easy, like your neural pathways. That's the easiest flow. So your subconscious just does it.
You're close. It's a habituated memory. It's a habituated pathway, I should say.
Yeah, I was going to say, because originally when we were first learning how to walk, it wasn't so easy.
No, it was not.
We were falling down, we were stumbling, and it was easier to crawl or to roll. But once we had that process, that pattern, and we worked through that hard and it became a habituated process, then yeah, it gets to the point where we don't think about it anymore. And one of the things that came up for me is Patty was talking about, the different types of memory. And what came up for me, Blair, is your I am process, the identify, apply, and master. We
Right.
have to first identify what to the first part of, and I forget, Patty, what the first memory, uh, sorry, going back here.
Oh, the declarative memory. You're talking
Yes.
about the working memory.
Yeah, so the declarative, and then you have the
Yeah, it's the what
procedural,
we know.
yeah, which is the application, the A part of I am, and then you have the is it procedural? Or sorry, that's the middle one. Anyway, and then you master it, which is that habituated process over and over again. Also, what comes up for me is these are the sticky habits. That's how come there's sticky processes or sticky behaviors, is because they're, for lack of a better way, and you can probably correct this, Blair, but it's kind of the way we were built. It's the more natural, easy process. And as we've talked about before, the mind will take the path of least resistance. And so once we have built that process, where we have the identification, first of all, then we can repeat it. And that repeatable, duplicatable becomes with the application and the mastery. If
Agreed. Now, one of the things I'd like to just move back to is, because this is a reboot, so sort of we're back starting, that sort of. We're back starting at the beginning again. And we're figuring out a little bit deeper, because we got a lot of people here that know stuff about it, but we got to keep it simple too. So, because we have some people that haven't got it deep yet. And hopefully we've got more people on YouTube that made it this far and go, okay, let's take a look at this. But this is what we do in our lives. We figure out what we want, then we generally figure out how to get it. Now, if we don't name and label it, like, a little baby, my daughter Catherine learned to walk in like less than 24 hours. Two of her cousins came over and they were running around the kitchen, living room, or kitchen, dining room, living room, hallway, kitchen, dining room, living room, hallway, running around. And all my daughter could do at the time was crawl. And she'd start crawling, chasing them, because she wanted to get into the game too. Well, all of a sudden she saw that, and then they were running around and coming in the other way. So she'd start hearing them behind her. So she'd turn around to go try and catch them there. And then they go running by, and she'd turn around and start crawling quickly as fast as she could. But she couldn't keep up even close. But she flipped over on her butt and then started watching them, like studying them on them running, like one foot in front of the other type of thing, and seeing that. And sure enough, the next day she was hauling herself up on the walls of furniture and standing and walking, or trying to. And that's how she got it. But she goes, I want to do that. Did she have it named and labeled? Nope. She couldn't describe it, but she knew what she wanted. And she said, I want to do that. So it was the behavior. So what would happen? We're all grown up now. We can walk, we can talk, we can figure stuff out. What if somebody, me in this case, figured out behaviors that were identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable that we could make happen in a highly effective manner in that repeatable and duplicatable manner? What happens to our brain? Shane, what do you think happens to our brain?
It creates new pathways, so it's just built to it. I mean, it just you don't even have to think about it; you just do it.
True, but that's where it winds up. But when we're testing out these new behaviors, what do you think we need to do? Like, chunk it down. Can you think about this in relatively small chunks? And maybe I'm asking you guys to go too deep, but I'm going to ask anyway because I find it fascinating myself. Maybe not everybody, but I do. So, so what is it? What's that thing that causes us to want to do something that we look at?
Well, that's what I wrote in the chat. What is your wording around behave to your desired results versus believe you can do it?
Okay,
Is
but
there
is it a belief that you can, do you believe that you can do it?
sometimes?
Did Catherine believe she could do it as a baby? Or did she
Probably
just
not.
do
Probably.
it?
I mean, she just did it.
She desired it and did it. She didn't believe. She had,
Mm.
it was, there was, there, that's a very complex thought. Okay. It's a matter of doing something. And honestly, it's trial and error. It's like one of those things Catherine also many years later said, fail fast, falling forward. And I go, yeah, we have to. We don't believe we can do it because we don't know if we can do it. But we do something and figure out what part worked, what part didn't. And let's take out the part that didn't work, do more of the part that did, and improve on that. And when we do that, life changes.
So focus on effective versus ineffective.
Absolutely. And most of us at school are taught to focus on the things that we got wrong.
Yeah, fix what you did it. If you did it wrong, fix that. And then all of a sudden now that's all you think about. And then what does your subconscious do? You continue to repeat those
Exactly.
behaviors.
Exactly. So if we focus on what works, on the elements of that work, and how do we build on that? That's my whole premise for the idea of mind models. Because so many of my students came in with a horrendous beliefs that they were no good, that they weren't worth, they weren't worth living for or being alive. They were potentially suicidal back in the day at Life Skills College. Um, all of those things were beliefs. They had hopes, dreams, and desires, but they didn't have behaviors that were being changed. Yet, when we gave them a way to cope differently and specific things to do, all of a sudden they start improving. So changing behaviors changed results. Hoping did not change results. Wishing did not change results. Even believing did not change results. Testing and doing and evaluating got results. And if there is no testing, no evaluating, just judging, and go, I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I can't do this because it didn't work the first time, we have a huge problem. But that's where mind models come in because we don't need to go along with the masses and try to believe our way out of something or figure out what somebody else is working. Because Patty made a brilliant point. Everybody's memories, in other words, everybody's neural wiring in their brain is unique to them.
They could be in the same situation, same whatever, and they each have different interpretation of what actually took place.
Not only that, I mean, Becky and Tim do this thing like, do you want to share about your ways? Sorry to bring this up, but it's about the girls. My apologies, but you guys
I just
did. Go ahead.
so, so I just wrote down notes to myself. This is huge in our story. We did have belief, hope, and faith, but we did things to test and build healing and hope through faith. It wasn't just I know things are going to be okay, they're going to be okay. We worked to accept so that they were. We built through behaviors in everything that we did.
And I've heard many times from you and Tim, even in the same situation, you didn't use the same mind models
Nope.
to cope through things.
We didn't then, and we still don't now.
No.
Sometimes we're on the same page. Sometimes we're talking same mind model, but usually we're filtering through our own process inside the situation or others that we're navigating.
Well, and I was going to say, even in the same mind model, the way
It's
it's
true.
filtered is different. The approach.
Exactly. And that causes us to have flexibility in the mind models, but still have the mind models as a commonality.
So, do you mind if I ask a question,
Please.
Tim and Becky?
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Do you no? Anybody can answer. Do you find as you did mind models and you had a desire to grow and rewire your mind, a little blurb there for Blair's book, but do you feel like the old adage, like the people that you hang out with is who you become, or do you feel like people that you try to lift up and grow and learn mind models and think different? Not saying that you're above everybody, but do you feel like as you tried to grow that you had to take people out of your life?
I will answer that, and yes.
If
Yes.
people that just like, oh, what are you trying, like, what are you trying to do to be better for? You're just who you are. That's just who you are.
I have a thought, but
Go for it. No, go for
you're
it.
thinking.
Yeah, go for it while I'm.
So it's a very interesting process for us because when we started with mind models, it's because we wanted to level up. We wanted to level up how we thought about things. We wanted to be more effective with each other in business and all of the pieces that came with mind models. And as we started becoming more effective, we found that people around us were a bit more uncomfortable being around us
Yes.
because of the way in which we were being. Not that we were being condescending, not anything like that, but just the way we were behaving was different than we were before. And there was a little bit of that crab in the bucket syndrome, like, oh, they're exiting, they're going this way, and I don't know that I like that, so let's pull them down. And so in some cases, there were some relationships that we maybe had a little bit different boundary set on, not like anything like super rigid, but they just kind of like fell away because they didn't want to be around us in the trajectory that we were. So it was, and sometimes it was a level of like how we communicated with different people just kind of shifted a little bit. And it wasn't like we cut strings per se. I don't think that we ever cut strings with
No,
anyone.
we never actually, and that's actually that helped with what the way I was thinking about this is it wasn't that we were filtering, they filtered themselves out of our lives, really.
Right.
I mean, when it came down to it, we became more curious, started asking more questions, which and when others went into, and I hope I'm not going too deep here, Blair, but when, Blair talks about the why and how what that does to us emotionally and sends us into that negative space, when we stopped asking the why, and when somebody brought up the why, we got curious and asked them questions about it, instead of joining them in their pool, they became uncomfortable. And when you start saying, well, what if you did this, and just showing a more effective way.
Or do you care
Yeah,
if I share with you
yeah.
a different perspective? It was, yeah, anyway. I don't, did that answer your question, Shane?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's just some of the people, and probably Christy and I, even before we started Blair, some we never really cut strings like, hey, we're cutting strings. It just, as we try to grow and try to do, let's say, level up the relationships themselves, the people that are comfortable being stuck. They have no intention to ever changing. They're just stuck, and we're here, and this is like a pig wallowing in their own stuff,
Yeah, and actually that
and they're
is,
happy with it.
I love the way you put that, Shane, because that's an excellent way to describe it, is those that were just happy to stay stuck, happy to be where they were in their own muck, just stayed in their muck, and we have chose to level up and become, more effective. And just naturally we find that, through influence, we are now surrounded by the same like-minded people. So
Mm-hmm. I mean, we'll talk to anybody. People like, what are y'all doing? And if you want to, like, we'll lock arms and bring you along. But if you want to stay wallowing in the pig muck, then have at
Well,
it.
and I think this is an interesting, just to circle back to what we're talking about with memory, is when you take an active role in your life, like an active, not just passive or reactive, but when you take an active role in your life using mind models, the memories that you have of how things were, or the memories that people have of how you were, start to shift. And so it really circles back into these foundational things that we're talking about with how our memories are shaping our beliefs. And by being very intentional, we get to choose differently how to behave, which then impacts our memory of things, our ability to, again, take an active role in our life in creating something with identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable skills that Blair has masterfully identified so that we can then harness the power of a name and label in our own world.
And when Blair starts talking about, what us and our process and what we did when we went through the mind model class, what the awareness that we had was we wanted to level up. We were wanting to change our mind. We were wanting to, and so once we had the identifiable process and the awareness that it was the behavior, changing the behavior that would then get us to where we wanted to go, it was just naturally easier for us to lean into that. And it was the same thing with, when we lost our girls. It's to kind of your point, Shane, do we want to lay here in our muck and roll around in our mud? Or, now that we are aware of what's going on, we can identify where we are, where we want to go, what behaviors do we need to take to get there, and we've applied it. So
Oh, yes. And then you guys know, statistically, when tragedy like that happens, couples don't stay together.
No.
Statistically, yeah,
Yeah. We buck quite
very
a few
proud of it.
due to how we think, not what we're thinking about.
yeah.
And that
Yep.
is, again, Blair, we have faith, but what trumps that in some regards, even the building of that, is behaving
Mm.
and being able to identify what we want, have that desire, and then actually be able to take identifiable, repeatable, duplicatable action on that is a huge thing. It's not just a whimsical, I hope, anymore. It's building concrete a concrete process that allows us to have more hope or to have more faith and to have more effective processes, to be more effective in our communication with ourselves and with others, to be able to respond and not react,
Mhm.
okay, to situations and others that are around a multitude of inputs. Like we're talking earlier on the call, like if we could remember everything, if we had to hold everything in our brains, we'd be nuts. And there's some days that I feel like I am like 2 breaths away from the edge of Nutville. Okay. But we are able to pull ourselves in using these skills and bring it down into the simple things, right? Let's stay present. Let's get ourselves to the our RFN, right now. And let's deal with this, not all this, this. Okay. And then let's go from there. So, and our memories of how to do that, to Patty's point, is talking about how core memory is to survival. If you can use your memory to identify what you have control of and get yourself to the present space, ooh, what a powerful human being you are.
I want to I just did I'm building. Okay, Ashley Ashley Ann uh, and Ashley is a uh, mind model method coach that I trained up as well. Um, and we got reconnected and we're working on a project. And it's mindmodelmasterysecrets.com. And yesterday actually, um, she brought in a guest on there, a young lady, I don't know, 20s, 30s, somewhere in there, that was having challenges. I got to do a little bit of talking with her, very little bit, and then a whole bunch of profiling and a whole bunch of talking about how she's stuck and how she's stuck in relationships, how she's stuck in her life, and those memories she's made have held her hostage in her own life. And without ever meeting her before, within about a 45 minute to an hour period, she was crying, 5 or 6 times during that session. But the reality of that is that most of that were sort of like breakthrough tears. Number one, somebody understood her. And number two, there's something I can do about this. Where when you find your life is stuck, but you know no other way to move forward, and then all of a sudden somebody gives you some very simple words, like just ask you, is what you're doing effective or is that ineffective? Not judging you, but evaluating with effective versus ineffective, and not making you right, wrong, good, or bad. Just, is that effective? Does that work for you? And she starts crying because she's never looked at the world that way. And it took so much pressure off her. She didn't even want to necessarily be in a relationship at all. Like, just, forget it. Have her friend, Ashley, and, just leave men out of her life, leave her family, whatever's there. I don't know. I'd be making up a story about that. But all I do know is that family had an impact on her, her dad in particular. But that's it. That's all I know. But how she was thinking about it was evident through her language and giving her an alternative way to think. And that's what we're doing in this, is giving people a different how to think way. And we're doing this reboot series as a result of figuring out something brand new that very few people in the world know how to do, yet everybody, to a person, I do not have a single person that has learned this that says, oh, this is shit, this doesn't work. Okay? Not one. Now, I've got lots of people that say this works really well here, not so great here, and I give them another mind model thing. Okay, that works. You know,
To
it's
your
not
point,
about,
Blair,
sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
that's okay. To your point, I think, we frequently hear the mind and memory compared to a hard drive,
Yeah.
and the brain is not. The brain is not full of isolated files that you can pull up. Everything is cross-wired. Everything is wired into all different parts of your body. So, the movement of your body, what you hear, what you see, your feelings, these are not segmented off, but they're wired into every experience that you have. And those things can be accessed in a lot of different ways through a lot of different pathways. When you use mind models, your brain chooses the most effective pathway to the most effective memory to move you forward, as opposed to focusing on memories of what did not work to hold you stuck. So when you learn to work with the biology of your brain, you can help yourself along in ways that are totally life changing.
Yeah.
So, long term memory, the other thing is long term memory does not get full. We don't we don't fill it up and there's no more space there. It just gets more elaborately wired and rewired and encoded in there. So, Brent, I wanted to ask you, I saw your hand over your eyes, you deep in thought. What's going on for you? What are you taking out of this?
Oh, oh, thank you for thinking I was in thought. I was just sitting back,
He
listening.
was sleeping. No, just kidding.
Oh, you were sleeping. Okay.
Um, I, yeah, I think it's just in simplest ways, what's most effective in building, and then but digging into the memory, how memory ties into, but what those effective pathways are, and you're building those become habits, the most effective way to move forward if you choose to do so. And the power of choice is there. So choosing to do so and being able to see it as well. So notice it, like, so awareness and notice is there. If that wasn't there, you wouldn't be able to see what's working, or see what's not working. What's come about, the results, if you've got those or not. You'd end up, like Shane said, like, it's just a pig in your own mud, just happy just to exist. Um,
So,
so
Brent,
yeah,
have mind models impacted your life?
yeah,
How?
yeah, I would say so.
What is
Um,
different about you now than before you had mind models?
well, how I think, how I see the world, not so much how I see it, but being able to take a step back sometimes and see different perspectives. It's not just about me. Like, it's not me. There's other things going on, and to ask questions. The big way is to ask questions and be effective questions with myself and others. Like, the example Tim and Becky, like with other people. Stop and alignment. May I ask you a question to get thinking? Is that effective? Does that work? Or is there something that's not working? What is that, to be able to point that out? Um, that's what I had applied, easiest to myself, was to first identify, ask questions and what's working, what's not working, and then evaluate that, and then move forward. So it was the three E's, really was the first set of mind models that I put to use. It worked quite effective. I mean,
So how did it
I don't
change your
think
life?
I was what I was in. If I remember, like, is this a memory? This is a long time ago.
Yeah.
So to remember exactly what happened, I just remember, like, the feeling, even feelings diminish as well. Like, the attachment of feelings, when it's not there, it's just as a memory. That feelings are different. They'll alter. So that's one thing I noticed as well. But it was like a lost, a sense of being lost. not knowing which direction. Like I knew I wasn't where I wanted to be and I was looking for something, but I just didn't know what it was, where it was, and that's where I was at. Like so finding a direction, setting up like a post, so like a desired result, and then going for that. So using the would be the IBER. So setting up a path, so for steps for you to evaluate to go to do that. And that's what those were the ones that are simple. I just choose to apply them.
Okay.
So that's what, yeah, as far as I can remember, that was the ones. It was just the simple, the three E's is what really got me moving.
Great. Michael, what are you taking out of this?
Well, I was just thinking about how mind models have started to help me sort of change the way that I think. In like when people will ask me a question, my usual pattern of behavior would be to get stumped and be like, I don't know. Like I had an interview earlier today, and one of the questions was, "What's one of your weaknesses?" Insecurity, and I've been doing security for so long. I'm like, weaknesses. I couldn't think of anything right away, so I'm like, could you ask me another question? We'll move on. We'll come back to this one. And then in that process, I asked myself, well, what has happened in the past year is I've like a couple weeks ago, I got fired from a job, and I was like, okay, well, what was the weakness in that moment? And it was I have difficulty with people who have a sense of entitlement. I'm like, oh, there's the answer. That's the weakness that I have at this moment, insecurity. And I brought it up, and it allowed me to answer the question, as opposed to just being stuck in my mind of, oh, I don't know what to say. I have no answer. So it actually, changed the behavior and habit of just avoiding the issue and not answering the question, just moving on. I was able to actually effectively answer the question.
So moving from a pattern of just defaulting to I don't know to being able to locate effective answers to questions.
Yeah.
Excellent. Christy, what are you taking out of tonight?
Lots for sure. I, at the very beginning, didn't really know that there was another way. And so, kind of opposite of Tim and Becky, instead of wanting to improve myself, I was just stuck there that that's just how things are and things go. So listening when Shane joined, just those little drops and tidbits and things really, opened my eyes and realized that I didn't have to fall into the norm and be that way, which really helped me to start see that I did have value and not just people would tell me that. So I was able to see from using mind models and whatnot that, and I really liked how Brent used attachment of feeling, that I did that a lot. And then when I decided, which evidently put me most of the time in a stuck state. And then when I was able to use mind models and own things and take ownership for things by using mind models, just really allowed me to see that there is an extremely effective way to maybe not, and I liked how Brent also used IBER. I had that one wrote down too. But to be able to, might not always be the right process moving forward, but I'm moving forward, and then I can evaluate and start again and test. And one of the things I had wrote a long time ago that I went back and found was that we had talked about to stop believing and start behaving. And so yeah, I'm just getting lots of good nuggets.
Does it impact how you relate to others? Do my models impact how you relate to others?
Yeah, definitely. I'm very more conscious of what I say, how I respond, the questions I ask, and then also just being that, um, well, I strive to be that influence for just our kids around and the other people, even family that sometimes, when you get around Thanksgiving and everybody's complaining about this and that, and then I want to throw in my complaints, I kind of readdress that and try to um, show that there's a more effective way to go about and think about things. And, that just, yeah, so definitely there is.
Excellent. Thank you.
Did
Shane,
we want we're going around. Did we want to just call this a wrap up because it's after
we can certainly do that. I was just
evolving? I
certainly
know.
do that.
Yeah, I know. Just getting everybody into it, but it's already 8. So I don't want to drag it on too much for people, but
Oh, that's
and
fine.
Christy, your stuff sounded like spot on. I was just reflecting back to you when you were just walking around in the background when Shane was on the calls and you were just sort of putzing in the kitchen in behind there. And then all of a sudden you're now here and a coach. There
I
you
know. It's exciting and it's fun and it feels good. And to be able to see that, oh, I've used the word align a lot. We might not have to agree on things, but aligning with each other and understanding that it's okay to maybe not be here, but just aligning a lot. So I'm so grateful.
Cool.
Okay. Well, Tim, would you
Oh,
like to
sorry,
do the wrap
Christy,
up?
1 to 10. You might as well call that.
Oh, let's go 10 tonight. Sorry I was late, but
No
God,
worries.
No worries.
for sure.
So yeah, Tim,
Sure. Okay. Kick off the wrap up here. Shane, you want to give us your takeaway for tonight and number on a 1 to 10?
Well, I'll give it the old Tim Graff ditto. No, solid 10. We were a little late. We had some calves to brand and everything, but no, the I identifiable, repeatable, duplicatable. A lot of this is just simplicity. Just go back to the basic mind models and how just those simple mind model stacks will effectively change your life.
Yeah.
Not very long ago, I wrote down the respond versus react and Becky's right now and the Nanpu. So, I mean, just a lot of them are basic mind models that can effectively change your life. I mean, Christy and I have been married pushing 30 years and 4 adult kids and grandkids. I mean, we've always had a good relationship, even great at times. I mean, we've had the typical marriage and not so great times and not so great times, but these mind model, I mean, since we've been introduced to mind models, I think we've grown closer together since that and built a stronger relationship.
Awesome.
Nice. I see
Love it.
you're in agreement there, Christy. Yeah. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yep.
Michael, I know you shared just a moment ago, but you want to share your biggest takeaway in 1 to 10?
Um, yeah. So I'll do number 9, and I got 2 big takeaways. One is just the comment of stop believing and start behaving, and then also when both you and Becky were talking about how both of you, even within the same mind model, approach it from different perspectives, different ways.
Mhm.
That was just a big little aha moment for me. Is just opening up my mind to, you know, just approaching everything from as many different perspectives as I can.
Love that. Thank you. Brent, your biggest takeaway in a 1 to 10?
I gotta say that just I know it's the beginning of how the mind models work, what makes them effective, but how the memory plays into a part, just looking at that piece, and how that ties into and how that works. That's just more in depth on like the function and how like the brain works and what makes them effective, the mind models. So yeah, digging into that. But also, yeah, I gotta also say, like for me was the feelings, being able to identify, name and labeling feelings is a big one that I didn't do before that really made
Oh
a
yeah.
difference with me. So
I was
yeah,
flashing back to meeting you in LA when
yeah.
earlier on in this thing, and I'm going, man, have you changed a lot. Sorry, just
Well, I hope so. I
massive.
mean, I think I have, but to picture that it's quite different because it's from I'm an outside perspective. So saying that
Yep, exactly.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I give a 9 for me tonight. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, Blair, because Becky and I were actually going through some old episodes of the BDE, and yeah, I concur. Brent's been here for ever, and just
We're going
seeing,
on 6 years plus.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, seeing you in some of those BDs back then to now, yeah, it's cool to see your growth. So that's awesome. Um, Jackie wanted to check in with you, Jackie, and see if I don't know if your mic's working, if you can share, but if you can, we'd love to hear.
She's having some major issues with her internet connection. So even in the chat, it's hard for her to access that.
All right. Well, if you can, we'd love to hear from you, but totally understandable. Just wanted to check in. Thanks, Jackie. Um, let's see, Shannon, would you like to share?
Yeah. I love the question that started tonight. Like, what creates opportunities for some people and stuck states for others? That just has always been something in my mind that I've wondered because it's the natural, like, puzzle. How do we figure things out? How do we help people? You know what I mean? That drive to untangle things that are tangly and make things make sense and to just find a place of acceptance. I mean, this is going to sound silly, but later on, you were saying that everyone's neurowiring is unique to them.
Yeah.
And I think there's a balance for me between holding that with acceptance and then trying to think about how can I build bridges? You know what I mean? Especially in relationships or contexts that are either at work with clients or meaningful in my you know my inner circle of people. It's one of the things. Naming and labeling is going all the way through this, because if you're trying to create a common meaning with two different names and labels, like one of the things I was working on this week with a client and I've been working on for quite some time is a particular muscle activation through breath. And I've tried so hard through all the different ways that I knew how to teach that, and it wasn't working. And so I asked her a question. I was like, when you do this, what happens next? And then she demonstrated something that I literally have been trying to teach for months, right there perfectly. And I was like, okay, now what do you call that? And so finding, using questions to kind of excavate meaning that is shared out of something has been really fun. But coming at it from the idea, like when I first started teaching, it was like, okay, these are the things I teach, these are how I teach them, and here we go. And it's realizing that the process has to flow and change depending on how someone is understanding, connecting with words and meaning. Because, even something as simple as breath, which we all do, can, if you're trying to describe how to inhale and how to exhale in a specific way to someone, that might mean something totally different based on their understanding of their body and of the world. So that is just it's a fun thing. I also appreciated Becky, like, because in the very beginning of learning, we do the thing that attracted me to mind models very, very early on was that I didn't have to believe for them to work, I didn't have to believe they worked for them to work. But you rephrase that, Becky, in a really interesting way. And you said, I tried to write it down as quickly as you were saying it, that to do things through hope and faith and belief, those things that are a part of you, but to test, like to incorporate, I think both of them, like one is a part of the fabric of your being as a human, and then the other is the action and the behavior that you're doing it with. I think one is like an energy source and one is the action. And, you know, to remember that one, for me, well, you know, it feels like they're both necessary, you know, on some level. I can't just believe because then nothing will happen, but I do need to have the parts of life that make me me behind my actions for them to be authentic and to yield the results that I'm looking for. So that was an interesting thing to think about from a different point of view. And just at the very end, the question posed about learning how to work with the biology of your brain. And I think continuing to bring up just how the brain works in each of these reboot sessions is something that would be helpful, because we talk a lot about the function, but also just understanding some of what's natural to our how we're put together. That, you know, I mean, one of the most impactful things we talked about ages ago was the J curve of learning. That took so much judgment off of the learning process for me that I was like, oh, wait, this isn't me having a huge failure. This is actually the natural ebb and flow of things. And so connecting it back to the biology along the way sounds, and just thinking as I do things in everyday life, how what we've learned over the years does naturally fit in with how we're made. And I think it's really cool that the science has supported the things, Blair, that you've worked on for so many years, you know, and that they've stood the test of time, and that we can now understand a little bit more behind how well they hold up because of what people are learning.
Yep.
So that's really fun. So yeah, that's an 8.5 for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Patty, want to share?
Yeah. I'm with Blair. The way this whole thing works is real jazz for me. I mean, I love looking at how it all works and realizing that there is so much alignment between the way our brains are biologically functioning and the way the mind models are working to wire and rewire our thinking. One of the things we didn't bring up that I just wanted to mention is that memory retrieval, how you process what you retain, is as powerful as the memory itself, is a quote from Blair. So how you process what you retain is as powerful as the memory itself. So every memory, I mean, think about it, because you guys are familiar enough with the mind models that if you take a memory and you bring it back up and you're processing it through a why question concept as opposed to a what happened versus why did it happen, and you're processing your memories that way, you're going to come out with a lot of different feelings from one to the other. And the memory itself is not going to be identical in a why question concept as it is in a what question concept. So there's so much that happens. I love mind models causing us to be curious instead of judging what our thoughts are, instead of judging those as right, wrong, good, or bad, but looking at what works, what is working right now. That is just incredibly. And this whole thing, when I was looking at the memory and the biology of it, I have so much deep and profound respect and gratitude, Blair, to the things that you discovered, you encoded, you used, you tested. That's really an amazing achievement in a life, to put something together like this. That, Jackie, how about bringing a memory up in a how? Yeah, all of those things are different, Jacqueline. But to encode something so impactful on lives, reliably identifiable, repeatable, duplicatable, impactful on a life is just an amazing achievement. So like I said, it was a 9
Thank
for me
you.
tonight.
Thank you, Patty. Becky?
9.25. I love the discussion again, working with our biology, working with ourselves instead of against ourselves is a really cool thing. One of the phrases, Blair, I think it was you that said it, is hopes, dreams, and desires, right? Without behaviors change nothing. And I think that's a core piece here is just remembering that when we remember our memories, that we can clarify our assumptions and get utility from is a big deal. Remembering versus reliving, there's a difference. And how we use those pieces make a big impact on how our life moves or doesn't move forward. So really appreciate the conversation tonight.
And for myself, it's a 9-5 tonight. I want to echo what's been already shared by so many of us, the biology of it. I am actually fascinated by the brain and how it works. And when you start getting into just how the ganglia and all the things come together, it truly is fascinating. And one of the biggest things that the mind models just they bring so much clarity to how the biology, how it all works together, and the behavioral part of it is huge. And that's the biggest thing about the mind models and how it's changed my life is historically I got so caught up in the what to do's and the what to do's and the what to do's instead of the how and the actual taking action and the behavior part of it. And so my life was just like peeling out in mud. It was it was just the what's of it. Well, if I do this, if I do that, or I do this, and I wasn't actually taking much action. And I love what Shannon shared with her example of asking the question. It's about that experiential learning. It's and that's what we do here every Tuesday night is this is an opportunity, a real world opportunity to practice, to test, to hear how to actually do something, not just the what of it, what to it's the actual how to take action, and is the identify the duplicatable and repeatable part of this, which is what makes the mind model so powerful and how they've changed my life. Is getting into the process of it and that experiential learning, not just stuck in the mud, peeling out. So that's probably the biggest thing, that my models have done for me. And I love the fact that we're getting into the reboot stuff because this it's fascinating and taking it just a next level deeper and picking up on those little things that I've heard before, but hearing it in a little bit different way. So yeah, like I say, it's 9-5 for me. And Blair.
Wow. Sometimes I can give really good quotes because you guys are quoting quotes back and I go, that's a good, and then you attribute it to me. That's a good one. Like, holy shit. Occasionally I have
That
brilliance. Pardon me?
I said the guy that said that was genius. Yes. Oh wait,
Yeah.
that's me.
Right. Yep. Okay, so yeah. I love talking about the memory and Patty, your stuff that you were sharing initially with me was, or with everybody here, um, brought me back to what got me going in all of this stuff. And I just was seeing so much stuff that was claimed to have worked or claimed this or that, and this is what you're supposed to do, and this is wonderful, and this works all the time. And yet when it was tested at the college, which I was very, very fortunate to be able to have that set of circumstances in my life and to be able to test it out and see what actually works and what doesn't work. And to be able to do that in a reliable, identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable process. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. And that's I didn't see creating the mind models as a big deal. The first name of them was Points of Clarity, and they got rebranded as mind models. Basically, everything stayed the same, but when you got clarity, because um, when you got clarity, everything changes as opposed to certainty. With certainty, everything's stuck. And everybody wants certainty, mostly, I believe now, mostly because people have been told how important certainty is. But that dates back to well over 100 years now, where certainty had its moment. And certainty, you could be certain about a lot of things back then, like 100 years ago, because there weren't computers. There were machines with cogs and gears. And if you had a gear that has all these cogs sticking out of it, um, guess what? If one of those things broke off, you would be absolutely certain it's broken. Whereas today, we don't even know if our basic physics is as first principled as we thought from what's happening with quantum computers. And it's all a process of seeking clarity. I mean, it's like bizarre. There is stuff that is happening out there that shakes the foundation of everything, including thought, including life and death, actually, from a scientific point of view. By the way, it's getting a lot more aligned with religion. Science is aligning with religion, and religion is aligning with science. Just out of clarity, just seeing what happens. And so I get my mind blown and go, wow, these quantum particles that are entangled and are instantaneously communicating through vast distances. And they can be anywhere, like 2 inches apart or 2 light years apart, and they change instantly. That's mind-blowing to me. That's amazing, and that's part of how the universe works. But the cool part of that is that, first of all, mind models have stood the test of time, and they're just as effective now as they were back then. They're just fundamental to how thought operates. Not how we think, but how thought operates. And when you get an operation manual to everybody's brain and you start listening to them, and you work with somebody like the Sam person earlier today, she was amazing, or yesterday, she was amazing, and explaining how that operates, the depth to which she was able to process and go through both accepting herself and being accepted was mind-blowing. Now we just need to get more coaches out there to blow other people's minds and transform the world. That's it. So anyway, 9.5 out of 10. It was amazing. Go for it, Shane.
Oh, speaking of coaches, did we give Christy props?
We have not yet. Go for it, Shane. Go
What?
for it.
The newest certified mind model coach, Miss Christy Daniels, completed
Oh,
her coach
yes.
training last Thursday. Good job, baby.
Well done. Yep, exactly.
Fantastic.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Shane. I was just about to go there. But yes, Christy is our newest Mind Model Method coach, and we want to congratulate Christy. So congrats, Christy. That's so awesome.
Yep. There you go.
Okay. I'm going to hand it off to Becky now to take us out for tonight.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us for the last 90 minutes. We love our Tuesday nights where we get to learn and practice mind models in a real world scenario, talking about the things that really make a difference in our lives. As a reminder, please get your hands on Blair's Insider Notes. It's an opportunity for you to go deeper on the concepts that we're talking about. And as Tim mentioned on the beginning of the call, it's a great opportunity to get your hands on them because we are going through a reboot and we're going to be going a little bit deeper. So definitely get your hands on that. You'll be able to get all historical and ongoing notes for $25 a month or $300 a year. And again, it's starting at episode 318 moving forward. So definitely do so. Again, if you're out there on YouTube, go to blairdunkley.com /BDE-insider-notes. You can get it there. And for those of you on Zoom, pop it in the chat. All right, you guys, thanks again for hanging out with us on YouTube. Please make sure you comment, like, and subscribe, and join us next week. Again, we're here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Mountain, 9 p.m. Eastern, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.